Have you ever asked, what is heaven? Is it another dimension, a paradise? Does it really even exist? We're all going to pass from this earth, and knowing what comes next can end the fear of death and bring you peace. Our goal here at Hello Heaven is to answer these questions and many more concerning the afterlife. Welcome to our podcast, Hello Heaven. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our special podcast, Hello Heaven. I'm Barry Strohm, your host, and I use my abilities to speak with the spirits to bring you information about the afterlife. And tonight we're going to speak about Christmas.
And I'm Connie Strohm, your co-host. We believe that our shows are rather unique in that we bring you information about the afterlife and heaven by speaking with the spirits. In addition to Hello Heaven, we bring you a weekly message from Jesus on Wednesdays, a Sunday sermon, and channeling history podcasts on Sundays. The archives of all our shows are on our YouTube channel, and audios of our broadcasts can be downloaded at helloheaven.podbean.com, Spotify, Apple Podcast, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Alex, and many other platforms.
Okay, tonight we're going to celebrate the Christmas season by bringing you the true story of the birth of Jesus, as well as the history of the celebration of Christmas.
If you've been following our channeling, you know that Jesus was born in the fall and not December 25th. When Jesus was born, it was an obscure event and not recorded for history, so time was not remembered. Winter was a harsh time for the ancients, me too sometimes, and many people rejoiced during the winter solstice because they then understood that the days would begin to lengthen and winter would soon come to an end. There would be celebrations to mark the beginning of the end of the winter. The celebration of the winter solstice dates as early as 10,000 BC. So this time of celebration has been around for quite a while and is celebrated in all parts of the world.
Now, early Christians celebrated Easter, the time of the crucifixion, but did not actually celebrate Christmas. The Catholic Church wanted to celebrate the birth of Jesus, so in 330 AD, several years after Constantine called the Conference of Nicaea in 325 AD, he wanted to fix the date of an Easter celebration. Pope Julius I declared that Jesus was born on December 25th in Bethlehem in Judea. Now, keep in mind, this is more than 330 years after the birth of Jesus that took place in 5 BC. Christmas began as a Catholic Mass in 336 AD. The time was chosen to roughly coincide with the celebration of the winter solstice, which until this time was basically a pagan holiday. The Pope thought by having the celebration the same time as a pagan holiday, the Church would help reduce pagan worship. Now, it's interesting that the creation of Christmas has actually no foundation in written theology. The first recorded date of the use of a Christmas tree was in Strasbourg, Germany in 1605, and the tree was decorated with apples. The Protestant Revolution of Martin Luther created a foundation of religious celebration, and Christmas became a legal holiday in England in 1660. By the end of the 18th century, the tradition of giving gifts was established on the pretext of the Magi bringing gifts to the baby Jesus, and contributed to the view that Christmas was a secular holiday focused on family and friends. Santa Claus is seen as a secular figure.
When the Puritans came to colonial America, they staunchly opposed Christmas celebrations, and law was even passed in Boston making such a celebration illegal. English settlers in Virginia observed the holiday. In England, Charles Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol in 1843 that helped to revive the spirit of Christmas as a family-centered celebration. It was not until 1870 that Christmas was declared a holiday in the United States. Today, the holiday is celebrated in countries around the world, even those with Christian minorities. There are some Muslim countries that have outlawed the holiday. The secular nature of the holiday is represented by songs such as Deck the Halls, White Christmas, and Jingle Bells that have nothing to do with the birth of Christ. The commercialization of Christmas is synonymous with growing trends towards secularism throughout the world, a trend that hopefully will change in the future.
Now we're going to begin our special show by channeling with Mary, the mother of Jesus. Now, if anyone is familiar with the events surrounding the birth of Jesus, she or Joseph would be the ones who would really know what happened. So, Blessed Mother Mary, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you, Mother. Knowing that you were about to deliver a baby, why did you leave Nazareth?
The angels were coming to us at the time, and they were telling us that King Herod was a threat to our baby. He said that he figured that he had heard prophecy that the baby was very, very special. Now, the angels had already told us that the baby was special. They didn't give us a whole lot of details about it, but we did know that we were carrying a very, very special baby that was about to be delivered. But the angels came to us and they said things had changed. They said that Herod was very angry that he heard that our baby was going to be called the King of the Jews. And he heard that he wanted that title for his own sons who would be ruling after him. So the angels warned us that Herod would attempt to kill the baby. And Nazareth was under his control at the time. So he said that we had to flee, that we should pick up all our belongings and our family, and that we should head southward towards Egypt. The angels told us that even though the Romans were in control of Egypt at the time, that it was not under Herod's control personally, and that there would be other Jewish communities and families there that we could find where we could reestablish and the baby would be safe. They said it was a very, very difficult journey for us, and they knew it. But there was a time in the very near future that Herod would act, and he would truly try to kill our baby. So we had to pack up, and with some of the other family members, we started to head towards Egypt, where the angels told us we would be safe.
Who all accompanied you on the journey?
We took our family. We took my mother and father, my mother Anne, my father. Mary had a younger son. I had this younger son, James, and we had to take him along, obviously. Joseph had brothers, and we knew that it was very difficult and dangerous to travel in those days. So Joseph asked his brothers if they would accompany us on the journey. And there were about 9 of us all told, but we needed to travel as a group. In those days, if 2 people were traveling by themselves, they would be victimized by thieves and possibly even killed. So we knew we had a dangerous journey ahead of us, southward. We were on one of the trade routes, so we knew that we would take that. We would go towards Jerusalem, and then we would continue south, pick up the road that was adjacent to the Mediterranean Sea and go on to Egypt. And there were about 9 of us in total in the family that was traveling to keep the baby safe.
Yeah. What all did the angels say about King Herod?
They told us that King Herod was a very, very dangerous person. They said that he had much evil in his heart and that he had no compulsion about having people killed or maimed because they disagreed with him. They told us that he wanted his sons to take over ruling, and his health was failing, and that he had heard an ancient prophecy that his soothsayers had told him that a baby was to be born in the area under his power, and that baby would grow up and be very special and would be proclaimed as the King of the Jews. Herod was Jewish, and as his sons were of Jewish descent as well, he wanted that title for his sons who would be ruling after the death of the king.
When you left Nazareth, did you expect to return?
Yes, we did. We thought that we would have to travel to safety, but we felt that we would be able to return fairly soon after the death of Herod. What we did not know was that one of Herod's sons, Achilles, was as evil as he was and would resent an infant that was having any acclaim by the members of the Jewish population. So we did not think that we would be away for a long period of time, but as it turned out, it was a while until we were able to return.
In what month was Jesus actually born?
Jesus was born in the month of September. We wanted to leave as soon as the angels told us we could. We wanted still to have some nice weather. We knew that winter was coming and that we had to get as far south as possible, where the weather would be a little more mild. And it could get very cold in Nazareth. So we tried to leave as soon as possible, but it took a while. We had to prepare all our belongings. We had to prepare a cart. Joseph was very careful about how I was to travel since I was about to give birth. We all knew that the baby was going to come before we would ever get as far as Egypt. So he fixed up a cart for me. He put a lot of straw on the bottom and blankets, and he tried to make me as comfortable as possible for the journey.
How long did it take you to travel to Bethlehem?
It took us about 2 weeks to go as far as Bethlehem. Keep in mind that the roads were very bad in those days. They were very rough. Joseph did not try to push as fast as possible to get south. He truly had my comfort as his primary concern. He did not want to have anything happen that would harm the baby that was about to be born. So for the first part of the journey to Bethlehem, it took us about 2 weeks.
Why did you not stop and deliver the baby in Jerusalem?
Jerusalem was the center of Roman power at the time, and we were afraid to go in. We thought that perhaps Herod had arranged to have the Romans in Jerusalem looking for any woman that was about to have a child. So we carefully avoided going into Jerusalem because it was the center of the Jewish community, and it was also center of Roman power in those days.
So why did you end up choosing Bethlehem?
Bethlehem was about 8 or 10 of your miles south of Jerusalem. And as we were traveling around Jerusalem, I started showing signs that the baby was soon going to be born. So I told Joseph, I said, we do not have much further that I will be able to travel before I give birth. Bethlehem was on the trade route. It was a much smaller town, and there were facilities in the town for the traders. Keep in mind that there were merchants that would travel up and down the roads and would have to have a place to stay. So Joseph had his brothers go into the town of Bethlehem before we arrived and check it out to make sure there were no Roman soldiers there or any contingencies that he thought would be dangerous for the baby. They came back and said it was safe and that there was an inn or a facility where we would be able to stay, and that they thought that it would be a safe place to have the baby. So really it was necessity. I was going to give birth whether we were on the road, whether we were near any other town. But the angels had arranged for this in advance. So I think they knew that we would be coming to Bethlehem, and they made arrangements that we would be as comfortable as possible.
What were your accommodations in Bethlehem like?
Well, in those days, there were no hotels as such, but there were places with rooms where you would be able to sleep. The beds were of straw. They were very primitive, obviously, by your standards. Sometimes people would sleep in the stables with their animals. Many people that were traveling were afraid to leave their animals at night for fear somebody would try to steal them. So there was what we would refer to as an inn in town. There were a wonderful husband and wife owned the place, and they would rent space to travelers and merchants as they were coming through town. They did have some vacant rooms. We had to double up, but Joseph and I had a separate room. There were some members of the family wound up sleeping in the stable with the animals to make sure they were safe. But it was a very, very nice facility. And believe it or not, the wife of the innkeeper served as a midwife in the area. And when the time came, she helped me to deliver the baby Jesus, and all went well.
So then baby Jesus was not born in a stable.
No, the baby was not born in a stable. It was born in the room that they had given Joseph and I to stay in. The midwife was there. When it came time, close to the birth time, we made Joseph get out of the room because he was a nervous wreck. But I gave birth in as comfortable a facility as I could. And there was a second small bed in the room because it was customary that the children would travel with parents, obviously, even in those days. And the family that owned the inn fixed that bed up, put blankets on the straw, and that is where we placed the baby Jesus.
Angels did a wonderful job of taking care of you all. What was it like when you first laid eyes on the baby?
I can't describe it. The baby, when you looked at it, knew that it was so incredibly special. It had these big blue eyes, which was very uncommon for the people of our area. It was, the midwife cleaned the baby and it cried at first, but it quieted right down, and the midwife gave me the baby and I held it to my chest. And all I could do was laugh and smile in spite of all the pain that I'd just gone through. The baby was incredible. Many babies cry a lot, are sick. The baby, our son, was very, very healthy. He did not cry as much as other babies, and he was very good with everyone. When Joseph came in and held him the first time, it was, the look in his eyes was incredible as well. And you could just see everyone immediately fell in love with this small child. From the time he took his first breath and cried out, he was very, very special.
Besides the family, who was the first to see the baby?
Well, there were hands that worked at the inn, and after the baby and myself, we were cleaned up and presentable. They came in to see the newborn. All of our family members obviously were there. Joseph's brother, my parents, they were very, very proud of the newborn child. So on the first day, basically it was just the hands that worked there, the owners of the inn, and my family that saw the baby. But as word spread that there was a newborn child, and some of the neighbors came and asked if they could see the baby. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful thing. Now, the angels were telling us that there would be a short period of time that we would be safe, that there were people that were coming to visit with us, so we had to wait for their arrival. They said that these people would speak with Herod, and that Herod would not do anything until after these individuals were given an opportunity to locate our family and the baby. So we felt that we had no choice but to just simply sit, do the best we could for the early days of the baby's birth, and simply wait for these individuals to show up.
Did shepherds come to see the baby?
There was a time, I think after the first week, that a bunch of shepherds came through the town with their herds. They had been in the fields for many weeks, and they had been very homesick. They all had families. They asked if they could come in and see the baby, that they missed their own children, and we gave them permission to come in, and they looked at the baby, and I think they truly understood just how special he was as well.
So the wise men come to see the baby?
Yes, they were actually princes. They're Persian princes. And they are the individuals that the angels told us we had to wait. It was approximately 3 months till they showed up. And Jesus was 3 months old at the time. All of a sudden, we saw this huge group of men coming into the small town of Bethlehem. They were dressed in wonderful clothes. They had soldiers with them for security. They had slaves. There were wagons that carried their tents and their food supplies. There were probably 50 of them, all told, in the party. But there were 3 men that were obviously the leaders of the group. They came in, and we were utterly astonished. Joseph and I had never seen people with this type of wealth before. And they were the most humble of men, as you could imagine. They came, they said they were told, the angels came to them and told them that there was a baby that was so very, very special, that would grow up to be the Messiah, that they were to come to see him, to honor, and to bring presents. They said that it was very important that they brought presents because they were told by the angels that we had a long journey ahead of us. And the angels informed them that they would need support on that journey. So the wise men brought these incredible gifts for us. There was frankincense, there was myrrh, and there was gold and silver. They brought many coins that we could use on the journey. They said that they should take the gifts and the money and use that to help pay for the journey and to settle when they got to Egypt, where they would be safe. They said that on the way to find the baby, that they had stopped and the first thing they did was to stop and to meet with King Herod. Herod was very friendly to them. They told him that they were here to see a baby of prophecy. They said that they never mentioned anything, that this baby would become the king of the Jews. But Herod told them he wanted to come and do homage to the baby as well. He said that he asked us if once we located the baby, if we would come back to him and tell him where the baby was, that he wanted to take his sons, and everyone wanted to see this wonderful child that prophecy had told them about. They told us that they did not trust Herod, that they felt that there was much more to it, and that the angels had told them not to trust him as well. So they said that they would spend some time with us in Bethlehem, and then they would leave by another route. And they would be very careful that Herod did not realize that they had left the country. And by doing that, they would buy time to secure our safety, because Herod would be waiting for these wise men to return and tell him where the baby was located. As we heard later, when Herod found out that the princes had left without returning, he dispatched his soldiers, and they were ordered to kill male children at the time. And many were killed at Herod's orders. But the wise men were really the key to us being able to finance our journey, to establish a home in Egypt, and when the time came to return, even though we did things while we were living in Egypt that would help us to raise funds for the return journey. We always wanted to get back to Nazareth because that was where our family was located, and we wanted to return. It's just that it took many more years than we thought.
How long did you end up staying in Bethlehem?
We were there about 3 months when the wise men arrived, and they were with us for maybe a week or less. So we were there just a little bit over 3 months. When the wise men left, we packed up and we left as well. They obviously went one direction and we went south towards Egypt. But all in all, we were probably there just a week or two over 3 months.
So where did you go when you left Bethlehem? I know Egypt, but what part?
When we left Egypt, we tried to stay on traveled trails where it was safe. Joseph's brothers agreed to go the whole way to Egypt with us for safety. So we now had a small baby. We had the younger baby James of Jesus and all of our other family members. And we traveled south and then headed over towards the Mediterranean, where we picked up the main trade route. We had become friendly with merchants while we were in Bethlehem, and they allowed us to accompany their caravan as we went south. The merchants were very knowledgeable in how to travel during those times, and they gave us a lot of good clues and helped provide for our safety. There were times that we would see groups of people had been robbed, and there would be graves by the roadside. So it was truly a dangerous time, and the roads were very difficult. I was now traveling with a newborn and a small child, so it was very, very dangerous. It was very difficult because of the condition of the road. But Joseph did all he could to make us comfortable, and we made the journey south. We had thought about going to Alexandria because there was a very, very large Jewish community in Alexandria. But we also knew that the Romans were there. Roman power was relatively new to Egypt at the time. Antony and Cleopatra were dead. Augustus was the ruler of Rome, and he was setting up his power in Egypt. So we decided that we would not go to Alexandria because we did not know how far the power of Herod would extend or even how long he would live. There was a small town called Memphis that had a Jewish community. It was about 50 of your miles from Alexandria. So that is where we stopped. That is where we established a home. Once we reached Egypt, Joseph's brothers returned back to the Nazareth area. They had families back there, and they did not want to stay with us. On the way, my father had an accident and passed on the way to our town, to Egypt. My mother Anne was still with us, and we did many, many things to create as good a home as we could in Egypt, and lived there for about 8 years until we felt it was safe to return. And that was when Herod's son Archelaus was removed from power in Judea.
Thank you, Mary, so much for telling us the whole story. It's a wonderful thing to know. When we wrote the book, Jesus, the Missing Years, we covered all of the events concerning the birth of Jesus in detail. One of the most interesting chapters was the one concerning the wise men, or the princes, who visited with the baby. Tonight, we're going to channel with one of the wise men, Balthazar, and let you understand what really happened with them. Balthazar, thank you so much for joining us. Will you tell us about who you were and where you lived?
We were actually cousins of the ruler of Persia at the time. There were wars being fought back and forth between the Romans and the Persians, and there was much unrest. But this was a time of relative calm. There were 3 of us We were all cousins, and we were treated as princes. We lived at the head of the Euphrates Valley on the trade route, and we had areas, small areas, where we governed under the control of the empire. It was a fairly peaceful time. The three of us, I guess you would say we had psychic abilities, but we had had dreams about the coming of a baby, that there would be the Son of God was going to come and he would be the Messiah. The angels told us that the time had arrived and that we would be needed because they needed help. The angels informed us that King Herod wanted to destroy the child, that he was jealous that the child would grow up and usurp power from his family, and that we should travel, that the baby was born in the small town of Bethlehem, south of Jerusalem, and that we should travel to the area and that we should take gifts for the child, that those gifts would be needed, to have the family flee to safety. That the angels told us that they would go to Egypt where they would be safe, where they would stay until Herod would pass from power. They said that we needed to visit Herod on the way, that he would ask us the location of where the baby was born. He told us that we needed to tell him that he would ask us to tell him the location of the child, and that after we left, if he knew the location, he would have the baby killed. The angels told us that we should not tell him that where the baby was, that we should tell him that we would return and inform him of that, but that we should leave on a secretive route and return to our homes. So it took a while for us to organize our journey. We had a little over 40 security men with us. We took some of our slaves. We had to take wagons with our tents and our food. So it was a fairly large enterprise. And it took us, the best part of 2 months to get everything organized so that we were ready to travel. But as soon as we were ready, we got on the road to Bethlehem, and we did stop and see Herod on the way.
How did you learn exactly where the baby was located?
The angels came to us and told us in dreams. I'd had a dream that the baby was born in Bethlehem, and I went to my two friends, and they had each had the same dream. So because of the angels telling the three of us the same story, the same details, we knew that this was the prophecy that was coming true, and that we needed to travel and do what the angels told us. So that was how we learned. It was strictly from dreaming of the angels telling us where the baby was being born.
Did you follow a star to the baby Jesus?
No, we did not follow a star to the baby Jesus. We followed the roads at the time. A star would have taken us directly to Bethlehem cross country, and it would have been much too dangerous. There were no roads that went directly there. We had to first go to Damascus, and then we went to see Herod, and then we finally wound up in Bethlehem. So it was a roundabout trip, and we definitely did not follow a star to the baby Jesus.
From the time you left your homes, how long a journey was it till you found the baby?
It took us almost a month to find the baby. The roads were very difficult, even though they were trade routes. We had to meet with Herod. That took time. It took a day or two for him to arrange to see us. And then when we left Herod, it was another couple days to Bethlehem. But all in all, it was about 3 months for a total journey until we finally got to lay our eyes on the baby for the first time.
Okay, I believe you told us that the purpose of the gifts was to finance the family to get them to safety. Will you describe the gifts that you gave?
In those days, some certain items were very, very important. Myrrh, frankincense, cloves. We took spices. We knew that that was something that they would be able to trade on the road as they traveled. We knew that they would see other caravans of merchants and that they would be able to trade those items with those merchants very easily. But most of all, the great wealth that we gave them was in gold and silver coinage. At that time, coins were accepted. We had Roman coins and we had some Persian coins as well, but most of the coins that we gave them were of Roman mintage. Quite a few of them were gold, but we also gave them some silver coinage. Keep in mind that the Roman Empire was in its formative stages with Augustus, and he allowed his governors to print coinage. When we got into the area of Judea, we traded some of our coinage for the local coinage so that Mary and Joseph would have no trouble or gain attention. We told them that they should carefully hide the money that we gave them and be very, very careful that no one should ever know that they had this type of wealth that they were traveling with. And we saw the incredible baby that was the baby of prophecy. When you looked at that baby, you knew that it was an incredible gift of God. The thing that struck us is we heard you have Mary talk about were the incredible blue eyes that he had. Even at 3 months of age, the baby cried very little. It was incredibly well behaved. It would come to strangers that Mary would trust to hold the baby. And it was just this incredible little person. We were so honored to be able to honor the child. We had been picked by God for this mission, and we did it to the best of our ability. I was so amazed that we were chosen for this, but everything worked out. Mary and Joseph were wonderful people, and their entire family was so friendly to us. They were truly shocked when they saw us because they were very poor and they had never seen people like us. And I know they were very, very worried how they were going to be able to pay for the journey that they needed to protect their child. So God worked with us to provide the means, and we were honored to do it.
So what did you do after you left Mary and Joseph?
When we left Mary and Joseph, we took another route back to our home. We made sure that we avoided any contact whatsoever with the Romans. We kept on very backcountry roads. Sometimes we even went cross country through some desert portions. But we made very sure that our route was very, very secretive. We wanted Herod to believe that we were still returning to him, because we knew while he was waiting for us until it dawned on him that we weren't going to return, that the family was safe. And we wanted to give them a head start to get out of Bethlehem. Nobody outside of the inner circle knew where the baby was or what their plans were. And we intended to keep it like that. So we did what we could, and we were rewarded well when we returned to heaven for it. I cannot tell you how honored we were to be able to actually see the baby Jesus and to make all of the things possible for it and to give it the means to save the life of the baby. So I want to especially thank you for allowing us to come through again. We enjoyed speaking with you before, and Hopefully, should you have the need, we would be happy to return again in the future. So goodbye, and thank you so much for allowing us to speak.
Thank you for the information you're sharing, and thank you for what you did to save our Lord. So we're so happy you came through for us today and what you did for the whole Holy Family. I hope you enjoyed the information we brought you today. If you liked today's show, you'd love Barry's book, Jesus, the Missing Years, where he gives you such details about the entire missing 33 years not covered in the Bible about the life of Jesus, because at the time the Bible was put together, nobody knew about these facts.
Okay, on Hello Heaven, we like to encourage listener participation through the use of video calls if possible. Many of our listeners have supernatural experiences, and we like to tell those stories on our show. If you'd like to participate on the program, send an email to onestrohm@gmail.com. Tell us about your experiences, who you'd like to channel with, and what you would like to discuss. I'll get back to you with the time to make a recording. We're currently looking for listeners that have had near-death experiences or any other supernatural and unexplained happenings. Now, as Connie just noted, I have truly finished my 11th book entitled Jesus, the Missing Years, A Modern Gospel. We tell the whole story of the missing 33 years in the life of Jesus. We channeled with Mary, Joseph, Anne, the wife and children of Jesus, John the Baptist, Anne, his brother James, all three of the wise men, and many names that never appeared in the Gospels that are forgotten by history. The book is currently available on Amazon in paperback, hardcover, audio, ebook. Personalized copies are only available on my websites. It's barrystrohm.com and spiritspredict.com. So please tell your friends about the book. I'm sure they're going to thank you for it.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, Hello Heaven. Please tell your friends about our shows. They all mean to improve the existence of an afterlife and improve your life. The one certainty in life is that we all will face the day of passing, and the more you know, the less you'll fear that day. If you'd like to see videos as you listen, please join us on YouTube Live or Facebook Live on Barry's personal page and in our Facebook groups on Fridays at 6 p.m. Pacific time. The audios of our shows can be heard on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Alexa, Spotify, iHeart, and all the major platforms. The easiest way to download the audio of the show is just to go to podbean.com and search for Hello Heaven.
So I'd like to thank all of you for listening to Hello Heaven. I hope that all of you have an incredible Christmas, a Merry Christmas. I hope you get to spend it with your family. And I hope that you have time to contemplate just your relationship with God and all of the great blessings everyone has in their lives. Our show's unique, and we hope you're enjoying it. We'll bring you the live stream, as Connie said, at 6 p.m. Pacific time on Fridays. Knowledge of the afterlife will ensure that when that final day in your life arrives, you'll have no fear. Please tell your friends about our show. So goodbye, and thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to Hello Heaven. Please join us Fridays at 6 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube and Facebook. You can hear us on multiple audio platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Alexa, and other media platforms as well. If you'd like to appear on the show, send an email to onestrohm@gmail.com and tell us your story. Have a great week. Tell your friends about our show. They'll thank you for it. Music is by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com.